I'm sure most of you guys have heard of Project Bluebeam, which is a conspiracy theory alleging a NASA and UN plot to establish a new world order, propagated by Canadian journalist Serge Monast in 1994. It claims technology will simulate a second coming or alien invasion to trigger a new age religion with the Antichrist at its head. The most important aspect of it was the theory that it would be done through space-based technologically simulated events, such as fake holograms, to create a psychological crisis. This would be some variation of the V2K technology that can implant thoughts or images in the mind, and the idea is that they would be able to do this on a grand scale and produce a collective hallucination. And when you sit there and you think about what that is, he might as well have been describing television or the internet, right? It's like, that's sort of what media is. It's this mass hallucination that takes place based on what they put into whatever you're consuming. And I'm not saying this isn't possible or there couldn't be something like this in the cards. Famously, Werner von Braun said something similar on his deathbed, allegedly, that this was the last card that they were going to play. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. It's possible. But when I'm looking at it metaphorically, it's kind of like, okay, Project Bluebeam is sort of describing the internet and what has transpired through it. Our interaction with it is Project Bluebeam. It's this technologically simulated event. And we are, in effect, as a species, in a psychological crisis from our exposure to the internet and social media in general, and just how they have crafted the whole thing to interact with our minds. And then it takes on more meaning when you realize that these screens are emitting blue light. So it's Project Bluebeam, the blue light beams that are coming out of the screen into your eyes. And artificial intelligence, or AI, might as well be an alien invasion, which can be broken down to the same two letters, AI, alien invasion, artificial intelligence. It's something else that is alien to the human mind that is being embedded within it. In that sense, it's an alien invasion. That's what artificial intelligence is. A synthetic consciousness that is merging, fusing with our own. And that's what the 9/11 ritual was at its core. That event in 2001 was the symbolic blood sacrifice designed to power this transition into a new dimension, to fuel it into existence through our collective imagination. We experience this mass trauma as a species. Those images are played all throughout the world. And yes, it was functioning on the level of what we perceive to be tangible reality, but beneath the surface, subconsciously, it was priming the mind to be destroyed and built into something new. And they did that through all the ways dates, times, flight numbers, and things like that were woven into it, as that tied into all of the programming that was put into media surrounding this event before it transpired. They built this scaffolding of programming as it related to the event, so that once we saw it unfold in real time, all of that programming was triggered and the ritual began. This fusion with technology, the fusion with artificial intelligence. It's an alien invasion. This technology spreading into our reality. It's Project Bluebeam. The blue beams coming out of the screen into your eyes. And in that respect, it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? You go on this journey through the wormhole and you end up touching the screen. And then Kubrick in that film shows you the end of the ritual where you go through the monolith, you see the moon, and then the Star Child is born, because that's a product of the 9/11 Moonchild ritual that incorporated the personification of the event Donald Trump after the fact. It's, in other words, the great American eclipse, the coronavirus, which is why COVID-19 was scripted to be released during Trump's first term. And Operation Warp Speed produces the COVID-19 vaccination, which is the Space Needle, tying in Oz and Seattle, as that relates to everything we just saw go down at the Super Bowl ritual, where they had Seattle, Oz, playing in the game in San Francisco right next to the Golden Gate Bridge, with 9 and 11 and 88 being the star players on their offense. And number 9, Ken Walker, the third, winning the MVP, which tied in the Santa Clara aspect of the place where the stadium is, and Back to the Future Part 3, which features the Golden Gate Bridge at the end, and this ritual that I'm talking about, your eyes fusing with the screen, as that relates to the time travel or time dilation that takes place when your mind fuses with the alien invasion, the artificial intelligence. Time becomes something else entirely, and then on top of that, when you log on, when you plug yourself into the Matrix, as it were, you are consuming information at a rate that was not possible in the past, at least as far as we know. And this is a form of time travel in the sense that you can go anywhere at any point in time in the past. You can travel there through all of the information that's available that otherwise wouldn't have been possible to even come across unless you had access to the Vatican Library or something like that 1,000 years ago. And through exposure to all of these minds around the world that you would otherwise never come into contact with, you are essentially traveling into the future as well as you incorporate all of these ideas that you never even thought of on your own. It creates the space for the collective imagination to produce possible futures. So you're traveling back into time and forward into time from the singularity that is entering in to the internet at any given point on the timeline. At least that's what it seems like to me. That's why Back to the Future encoded 9/11 and Donald Trump as the personification of that event. It's the same reason Donnie Darko incorporated a parallel tangent universe being created through the blue ice plane engine falling into his room, which he escaped and then somehow had to put everything back together to close the loop. And that's pretty much what's going on via Donald Trump as it relates to 9/11. He's closing the loop now through his actions that will result in the creation of the quote-unquote New World Order. And I was thinking about that film, which I'm going to talk about more going forward in this video, in the sense that in the tangent universe, Donnie exposes Patrick Swayze's character as being a child predator. And now we're seeing that play out in real time through the Epstein saga as it relates to Donald Trump and the release of the files and that whole thing. And by the way, this film, AI, was released just a couple months before September 11, 2001. It was released in, June of 2001, June 29th. So, yeah, a little over 2 months between the release of this film and 9/11 itself. Just tying it all together, then, you have Mr. Beast being the most popular YouTuber in the world, so they say. Most of those numbers are probably fake, but they have expanded his brand into other platforms and made him an artificial star, quote unquote, which is how it's always done. And the beast is often synonymous with the Antichrist. But I hope you can see how AI, just as a catch-all term for this technology, like what it is building into, is that artificial intelligence, the alien invasion. Well, that is antichrist in terms of what they are putting into it and conditioning us to do with it. So it's symbolic that the most popular internet star, quote unquote, is named Mr. Beast. Symbolically, he is an example of what this is doing to us. He's an example of this new thing that's coming into existence. So they call him Mr. Beast on purpose to evoke that. But it's not necessarily that he is the Antichrist, if that makes sense. And keep in mind, his last name is Donaldson. Once again, tying in Donald Trump to this whole thing. And maybe tying in Barron Trump at some point, right? Donald's son, Barron Trump. Maybe he's going to play a role in all of this at some point in time. Anyways, I started talking about that and didn't think it would take this long. I just wanted to loosely touch on Project Bluebeam before getting started with what I really wanted to talk about, which is the Great American Eclipse and how that relates to the 2027-2034 eclipses in the Middle East. I assume most of you guys are familiar with this imagery. This is the 2017 path of the so-called Great American Eclipse, and this is the April 2024 path. And then this is the 2023 path, specifically October 14th, 2023. And I just want to note some of the things that transpired in conjunction with these eclipse paths. The first thing that I wanted to go back to that is kind of memory hold is the train derailment in East Palestine, which you can see on the map here is between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, kind of right on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. And this transpired on February 3rd, 2023. And there was a film release on Netflix for streaming on December 30th, 2022, titled White Noise. It just so happens that the plot of White Noise involved a train derailment and explosion that released a bunch of toxic chemicals into the sky, creating this cloud that was very dangerous to the people that were living in this town, which was set in a fictional Ohio town. And then a little over a month later, in real life, there is this train derailment that spills toxic chemicals in East Palestine, Ohio. What are the odds of that? Pretty slim that this film would be made and be released a month before this transpired. And it gets even crazier when you go to the plot, because the movie was set in the year 1984, which has its own association to what this quote-unquote New World Order is designed to do, right? But Adam Driver's character was a professor of Hitler studies. It's evoking this East Palestine anti-Semitic narrative in the context of this chemical spill. As you can see here, it's College on the Hill in Ohio. They call it the airborne toxic event in the film, which is exactly what happened in East Palestine. So going back to the paths of the Great American Eclipse, you have East Palestine, Ohio, right up here where the path of totality from the 2024 eclipse went over, and where it crossed with the October 2023 eclipse. Down here, there was a flood on July 4th that was devastating and killed a bunch of people in Texas. But going back to the actual date when this transpired, October 14th, 2023, it was a week after the Hamas incident in Israel. So you have East Palestine involved in this path, and then you have what happened in Israel involved in this path in terms of the timing of it. Remembering that this is October of 2023 and East Palestine is February of 2023 in the context of the White Noise film released on December 30th, 2022. And then Donald Trump's 2 presidential terms simultaneously surround these 2 paths. You have this path in August of 2017, which was his first year in office following the election in 2016, sort of demarcating his role as the moonchild in the Great American Eclipse. And then this path is in April of 2024, while he's on the campaign trail leading up to his second election. And he actually gives a speech in Eagle Pass, Texas, which is the first American town that the 2024 path went through. And he gives that speech on a leap day in a leap year, evoking the quantum leap that is Operation Warp Speed that tied into the whole coronavirus aspect of the ritual. I bring all of this up to show you that these events were coordinated with these eclipses. And I do that because I want to talk about the 2027 and 2034 eclipses that make the same pattern over the Middle East. You can see here that it enters through the Strait of Gibraltar, which Plato alleged was the site of Atlantis, somewhere in this area outside the Pillars of Hercules. And this is important because in all of the occult writings on America before it was created, or even after the fact by people like Manly Hall, it was known as the New Atlantis. This new Atlantis that will be built and then destroyed just like the old Atlantis. So, in the context of how Israel was directly related to what went on in those great American eclipses, all of that involving Donald Trump and him opening the Golden Gate, which again is relating back to AI, right? Because you have this technology getting around the fact that the Golden Gate in Jerusalem is sealed and their Messiah cannot return through it. So they open this gate in your mind through technology. And you are indoctrinated with everything that is on the screen in this way. All the propaganda conditions you to believe something. In this way, you are turned against Christ. You are a part of the Antichrist. You're a part of artificial intelligence. You have been invaded. An alien is now in your mind. You believe something that is not true. And in this way, it has opened the Golden Gate. It has returned the Messiah in the sense that your mind will serve this system that they control. So, those eclipses in America in 2017 and 2024, and the one in 2023, were rituals that are sort of being powered through this 2027 eclipse path that will go through where Atlantis used to be according to them. It will cross over Spain here and northern Africa and go down through Egypt and pass over Mecca, which ties in how they are coordinating the Islam factor into all of the things that are going on in Europe and just the world in general. This mass migration issue that ties into ICE, as that then further ties into Donald Trump. We'll get to that, but this goes directly through Egypt and Luxor, Thebes and the Valley of the Kings, and it will probably tie into William becoming king at some point in this window of time. But then the 2034 path, 7 years later, passes directly through Iran. So hopefully you can see what I'm saying here, how all of these events were symbolically coordinated to coincide with the Moonchild ritual as that related to Donald Trump. And then once Donald Trump is out of office, it's like he is setting up this. He'll still be in office when this path goes through, but it's like he's setting up the completion of whatever rituals they have planned in this area. In the same way that there was so much that went on in areas near these paths in the United States during the Great American Eclipse. And it didn't have to be actually in the path of totality. Some of the events were. There was all kinds of symbolism surrounding Carbondale, Illinois, where they crossed. But just in general, there were so many events that tied into the controlled demolition of the country as it relates to the creation of this new world order. And to bring it full circle for you, this is the cover of Time magazine with the Great Reset on it. And they show you the missing piece here, which is where the 2027 eclipse path will pass through the Strait of Gibraltar. It's the missing piece to the Great Reset. You see what I'm saying? They are building the New World Order. This is the missing piece. I've gone over this in a bunch of older videos, but hopefully it's taking on a little more weight now that we have updated information. And speaking of Spain, the name Spain is widely believed to derive from the Phoenician phrase, I won't even try to pronounce that, which translates to land of rabbits or island of rabbits. When Carthaginians and Romans arrived, they found an abundance of these animals, leading to the nickname Hispania. So Spain means land of rabbits. And we now have broader context for why Bad Bunny was chosen for this Super Bowl ritual, because he speaks Spanish. And he sung the entire thing in Spanish. So it's Bad Bunny, the land of rabbits, Spain. And then this is going to blow your mind. It blew my mind. The primary translation of the adjective frank in Spanish is franco or franca, which means sincere, candid, or straightforward. As a proper name, Frank is commonly translated to Francisco or its diminutives. So Frank is Francisco in Spanish, and some of you guys might have beat me to this, but what's the name of the rabbit or bunny in Donnie Darko? It's Frank. Okay, so the rabbit in Donnie Darko is Francisco, which ties the whole thing together, right? Donnie Darko, Donald Trump, the Moonchild, the Great American Eclipse, the culmination of it symbolically in the last Super Bowl 2026, where Bad Bunny, putting that subconscious idea that this is bad for you in your mind, this programming, influencing you in that direction, at the same time that Donald Trump is in the news with ICE, and there are the twin killings of two 37-year-olds who were born in 1988. And then Mary Steenburgen is born on 2/8. She turned 73 on the day of that Super Bowl, February 8th, 2026. Ken Walker III, Santa Clara, Back to the Future Part 3, Clara Clayton. When she buys her train ticket, the end of the line is San Francisco. And then, of course, Doc Brown and Marty create the scenario where they switch the track, and then she ends up getting out before the train goes over the ravine that they renamed to Eastwood Ravine because of the whole thing that went down there. And I believe Clint Eastwood is from San Francisco as well. There's another clue. And then they time travel over that bridge back to the future, and it's the Golden Gate Bridge. Donnie Darko and Francisco. Francisco, or Frank, is the rabbit that coordinates the whole thing and tells him what to do, which then extends the metaphor to what it is telling us to do, right? It was Francisco, it was Frank the rabbit, it was Bad Bunny speaking Spanish. And that is where the 2027 path of the eclipse enters land, over Spain through the Strait of Gibraltar. where Atlantis used to be, right? So symbolically, it's the destruction of the new Atlantis, or the controlled demolition of the United States. And it has all of this tie into the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and hopefully it's making more sense why now, because the bridge is the technology to open the Golden Gate, symbolically. That's why they chose Bad Bunny, who sung Spanish lyrics. And that's why ICE has been so closely associated with Donald Trump, because of Donnie Darko and the blue ice. And then, naturally, before all of this transpired, you had the Pope, whose middle name is Francis, blessing Greenland ice. Greenland being the Emerald Land, the land of Oz, because this is where they are sending your mind. And, along those lines, the Olympics that just transpired and are about to end, the Winter Olympics in Milan, what is the opening ceremony? Well, it's all about the yellow brick road, this imagery that evokes the Wizard of Oz, because that's where they're sending our collective mind, right? We're bringing scent into this new dimension. And if you watch this, they make a big show of two of the rings at first coming together in a way where they're facing each other like there's a bridge between them. Because it's the portals and the bridge between, right? It's your mind and technology and the bridge. It's the yellow brick road. They're sending your mind to the land of Oz, the Emerald City, the Green Land. Greenland 2 migration, migration in ice. And Pope Leo took over for Pope Francis, who died last April at 88 years old, right after J.D. Vance Bowman, his real name, Donald Bowman, goes and shakes his hand. And there were all those memes about how J.D. Vance killed the Pope. I don't know who or what is doing this, but it is obviously coordinated and scripted. I don't know what else to say. So Spain most likely will have some sort of relevance to all of this going forward. There's probably something that's going to transpire there along these lines. And there's a solar eclipse on August 12th, 2026, later this year, that will pass over the Arctic, Greenland, Iceland, the Atlantic Ocean, northern Spain, and the extreme northeastern part of Portugal. So this eclipse will be very symbolically relevant in terms of all the things that have been in the news with Donald Trump. The Spain thing was kind of under the surface as it relates to the Land of Rabbits and Bad Bunny and Francisco, the rabbit in Donnie Darko. Spain will have this eclipse, and then it will have the 2027 eclipse about a year later. This is just to prove that the Pope actually died at 88 years old. And remember, Pope Francis took his name from the person who the bridge is allegedly named after, tying it back to San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. And then Pope Leo, they say he chose his name for it relating to the last Leo who had a similar mission. But Leo obviously is a constellation in the sky known as the lion, and the heart of the lion is Regulus. And obviously this ties back into Back to the Future, where you have Marty McFly living in lion estates, where they have the lion here looking like the Sphinx in Egypt, which is where the 2027 eclipse will pass over. I don't know if it'll go directly over where the Sphinx is, but, you know, it's in the area. And Donald Trump has a very close relationship to Regulus in Leo the Lion. Donald Trump was born with his ascendant at 29 degrees 55 minutes of Leo. In that same position sat Regulus at 29 degrees 50 minutes. This is an almost exact rising alignment. The star of kingship emerging on the eastern horizon at the moment he took his first breath. Symbolically, this placement speaks of someone whose public presence was always going to become larger than the individual himself. Regulus does not create greatness, nor does it create downfall. It creates visibility. amplification of whatever is already there. It pushes a life into the spotlight for better or for worse, because its nature is to reveal the collective mood through a single figure. Well, there you go, right? They very strategically timed his birth so that this was the reality of it, because his role is what we're witnessing right now. Now, they could have just said it was this time. Maybe he was born at another time, but knowing these entities, I would not put it past them to influence a birth to transpire precisely at these moments. Because remember, not only is this taking place, he was also born during a total lunar eclipse blood moon to tie into the whole moonchild solar eclipse thing. And remember, your eyes are black holes as well, right? Your eyes sort of resemble an eclipse in the sense that the pupils are covering the iris. And you have two of them that are identical or twins. So you have the Gemini man, Donald Trump, the twin, influencing your eyes in the sense of the artificial intelligence invasion, right? The alien invasion of this technology into your eyes. The fusion with it. And his role as the Moonchild is to increase the visibility of their ritual. He was created for that purpose. Your eyes are twins in the same way, right? So it's the twin towers in that sense that are destroyed, and something new is built in its place, which is this one World Trade Center. And there's so many layers to it, but on the deepest one, as it relates to your mind and subconscious programming, your eyes are the twin towers that feed into the twin hemispheres of your brain, right? And those are destroyed. And something new, metaphorically, rises in its place. This fusion with artificial intelligence. And that is the 9/11 ritual. It's 2001: A Space Odyssey with the screen right there where they destroyed those towers. You see? The towers are destroyed and you go into the screen. You touch it, just like Bowman did. And you go on this odyssey and they create a star child in your mind, which is this new consciousness that you will embody that is Antichrist, Mr. Beast. And the Golden Gate is opened. They get around the fact that it's sealed. And you serve their agenda. And in that way, they have created their heaven on earth, where they are in control, leading the world again. And just to add one last thing, there's so much subconscious assassination foreshadowing surrounding Donald Trump as it relates to the Oz stuff. So I don't know what they're actually going to do, because that could play into this. They could assassinate the character in a way that would ultimately conclude and close the loop that I was referring to earlier. And along those lines, there's this triumphal arch that Donald Trump is going to build in Washington, D.C., and the placement of it is just wild in that context, where it's across a bridge from the Lincoln Memorial, Lincoln obviously being assassinated, and then it's right next to Arlington National Cemetery, where, of course, JFK, who was assassinated, is buried, and there's the eternal flame at his gravesite. Which gets at the whole idea of the torch on the Statue of Liberty, and that ritual with Diana where she was assassinated under that torch in France, and then Stranger Things, where the two worlds were merging, being in Indiana, which had the torch, and then symbolically on January 19th or 9/11, Donald Trump is at the game where Indiana is playing Miami, which is known as the U. So it's U. And that reminds me, somebody left a comment that U2 released a song titled American Obituary about the Renee Good killing by ICE. And it's like, yes, symbolically, this is America's obituary, this whole ritual. And the band's name is U2. So it's like U-Y-O-U, 2, T-O-O, you also. Meaning you're mine. It's America's obituary and yours too. Does that make sense? And in that respect, you're being assassinated metaphorically as well. Your mind's being destroyed, killed. Like I was going into with the two pupil eyes, the two eclipses, the coronavirus, the twins. The 9/11 ritual personified in reality in a deeper way by Donald Trump and his two terms that are the two planes flying into the towers, and then the controlled demolition follows. the length of that event in New York City being the same length as the original Wizard of Oz. Because that's what it's all about. An alien invasion into your mind, sending you into a new dimension, the Land of Oz. Wild stuff, right? It's crazy. That's it though, later.